Well, hello everybody. Hello, Pastor R.
Hello.
I'm Dr. Amir Rashidian, Pastor R. Dallas Green, and we're back with you for, top one. There we go. All right, we'll restart. Well, hello everybody. I'm Dr. Amir Rashidian with Pastor R. Dallas Green again, and we're excited to chat with you one more time. If you were with us last time, we had Jimmy here, and he shared a lot of incredible insight, and we talked about forgiveness and not just the health benefits of it, but the eternal benefits of forgiveness. So definitely make sure if you haven't seen that one, watch that one. But you don't need to watch that one to benefit from this one, because today we're actually going to talk about something that I really like, and my wife Brandy really likes. It's called bread. So and you're thinking that's kind of weird, but let's start with the word, and then we'll kind of dig in. So
Nothing better than bread.
that's right.
Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. So temptations are enticements from the devil to get us to do something outside the will of God. Jesus here was on a spiritual mission. He was being led by the Spirit, and he was going to have communion with his Father. Basically, he was preparing himself for his ministry. He'd been about 30 years at home, but now he was venturing out, choosing his disciples, and beginning his public ministry. So it says, after fasting 40 days and 40 nights,
Wow.
he was hungry. I think I'd be hungry too. A little bit. Nothing to eat out there in the wilderness.
Right.
He was totally relying upon God and waiting for the right time for him to eat again. And so all of his physical energy was gone and very depleted. He was hungry. And at that moment of weakness, the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with bread.
Right.
Bread is a gift.
Right.
It's a staple of life. So many times, my primary food has been bread. And around the world, bread, in their day, they would work for a day in order to earn a loaf of bread. The denarius would earn about a loaf of bread. So Jesus now is being tempted and said, "If you are the Son of God." Now, he could have been calling into question his very identity. If you are the Son of God. Now, he just heard his Father say, "This is my Son whom I love, with whom I'm well pleased."
That's right.
And he says, "If you are the Son of God." But I think there's something else going on here. If you are the Son of God, use your power and your prerogative to turn these stones into loaves of bread. In other words, the Father really hasn't taken good care of you, and you really are entitled and deserve to have something like bread. So why don't you use some of that power you have in order to turn stones into bread?
Right.
We know from Scripture that if a son asks his father for a loaf of bread, he won't get him a stone. Because we fathers know how to give good gifts to our children. So it seems as if the enemy is trying to get Jesus to use his power for his own personal satisfaction and fulfillment outside the will of God.
Right.
Jesus then answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." In other words, this temptation that you're enticing me into is not part of the will of God for my life. This season is my season of fasting. I'm withdrawing from food to have deeper communion with the Father.
Right.
This is not my season of eating.
Right.
So Jesus could refute him by quoting the Scriptures and knowing the will of his Father. So, what do you think about bread, Dr. Amir?
From a health standpoint, there's a lot of bad reputation following bread around. I mean, poor bread, people say don't eat it, they go carb free, don't eat carbohydrates and so on. And I've always wondered if bread is talked about in the Bible so much, and this is just one instance, but I mean it repeats. I mean, I'd like to do a study and find out how many times the word bread shows up, but I'm sure it's many times. And so how could it be bad? It can't possibly be a bad thing. So right now you talk to any bodybuilder and professional bodybuilders, amateur bodybuilders, you won't find one who says don't eat carbohydrates.
Mm.
They all say you need carbohydrates if you want to build a good body. So from that standpoint, they've proved by the physique that they carry around that yeah, it's necessary. And then we know from a physiologic standpoint, yes, you can go without carbohydrates for an extended period of time. Yes, the body does produce glucose. Your body can actually, through a process called gluconeogenesis, can take fat and turn it into sugar in your body, but it can also create these things called ketone bodies that can be used by fuel by the brain, the liver, and your muscles, so that yes, you could probably live without carbohydrates. But to be fully healthy, you do have to have carbohydrates in your diet. So that's a fact. But then why are people saying bread is bad? Well, because a lot of people have sensitivities to what they call gluten. Gluten is part of wheat. Well, all bread is made from wheat. Now there is wheat-free bread, but for the most part, it's wheat. And a lot of other things have gluten in it also. People have developed gluten sensitivity, but here's a fact. My wife and I were in Europe last summer, and we toured Greece and Rome, and it was a great trip. 10 days going around, and we didn't worry about what we ate, and we ate a lot of bread. Lots of really good pizza, lots of really fresh cheese and bread, and we enjoyed it. Now my wife is very gluten sensitive, and she can't, like, when we're home in the United States, bread bothers her, so she tries not to eat bread, or she tries to eat more gluten-free foods and gluten-free pizzas and so on. I mean, it's become a whole new industry now in America, but that wasn't there in Europe, and the bread didn't bother her. So it makes me wonder if what we've done with the bread here has made it the way it is, and the body has developed sensitivities and resistance to the type of gluten here, whether it's an industry issue, whether it's a farming issue, whether it's genetically modified products. That's fine. That's not what we're talking about. What I'm saying is, outside of the United States, bread doesn't seem to be a big issue, and if the Bible says bread is something important, then it can't be bad.
Well, Jesus is saying that man shall not live by bread alone.
Right.
So there needs to be some diversity in our diet.
Sure.
Not bread alone.
Sure.
But bread seems to be something that Jesus enjoyed and actually reproduced. He took 5 little loaves of bread, barley loaves, a little boy, and he took those loaves and blessed them and multiplied them, many times over again, and feeding a huge crowd of people. So Jesus felt as if bread is maybe a gift that we can give to one another.
Yes.
And the people had been hungry for several days.
Right.
Jesus, out of compassion, chose to feed them.
Right. Now I grew up in Iran, which is a Muslim country. However, from a cultural standpoint, bread was sacred when I was growing up, for many reasons. But number one was that everyone always says, and they always say this when they're about to eat or after they eat, they go, bread is a gift from God.
Yeah.
And so you never throw away bread, not even a piece. Like if it falls on the ground, you keep it. You might give it to the dog, but you don't throw it away, because they consider that a sin, and it's a sin against God. And bread is really one of those things where they say, not that they are that it's revered, the bread itself, but it's what it represents. It represents God's provisions for us by the culture in Iran, and so they just
We speak of when we eat bread, we're breaking bread together. This is something that have communion with each other.
Right.
And you mentioned the fact that it was sacred. When Jesus multiplied those loaves and they distributed to the people, they collected the leftovers.
Right.
12 baskets, probably for each one of the tribes. 12 baskets of leftovers. They had some lunch for tomorrow.
That's incredible.
Nothing was wasted.
Yeah.
So it was to Jesus as well sacred.
Right. But what sustains our life more than bread, food, and even water is the Word, right? And what we get from Jesus. Wasn't there an incident with the Samaritan woman where Jesus now talked about water instead of bread? Is that correct?
Yes, well, he had been traveling through the morning and arrived at this well, and she was thirsty and he was thirsty, but it was the middle of the day, and you wouldn't expect to find a woman at the well in the middle of the day.
Mm.
And Jesus asked her for a drink, and she said, "You asked me for a drink. You're a Samaritan. I'm a Samaritan. You're a Jew. Why do you ask me for a drink?" And Jesus said, "If you knew the gift that I would give you, you would ask of me, and I would give you living water." So Jesus has bread as well as water to give us.
Yes.
Sustains us.
Yes. Water that once you drink it, you won't thirst again.
That's true.
How incredible.
That's true. It
Yeah.
satisfies the soul. Well, going back to our story, Jesus was fasting here, Dr.
Mhm.
Amir, and I know you've practiced some fasting.
Mhm.
And how do you see fasting fitting in the life of a person who's trying to go toward a wellness lifestyle?
Oh yeah, see that's another thing. There was a while back, I think the year 2000, there was a gentleman named Bill Phillips who wrote a book called Body for Life. The book Body for Life was written based on a contest that he started. He had a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, an exotic car, and he said this car is worth $250,000, and I want people to compete for this car. So whoever has the best body transformation in 12 weeks will win the car. And he started this contest,
Okay.
and he had everybody not just send pre and post pictures of their bodies, but they sent essays in. Well, he read those essays, and he was really inspired. He said, "I'm going to make this an annual contest, and I'll keep it going. And based on that contest, I'm also going to write a book." So he wrote the book, and it was very popular. It was a big fad. And part of what he said in that was that if you want to build a good body, you should never be hungry. Because when we're hungry, we overeat. And he said what you should do is eat 6 meals a day. Every 2 to 3 hours, you should eat something. And he was quoting some other research and other experts who had said the same thing, and that was the big thing then. He said if you want to lose weight, you actually should eat more meals, maybe smaller meals, but you have to eat more meals to raise your metabolism and keep it high. And ever since that came out, I kept thinking, well, why does the Bible talk about fasting? If not eating is bad for you, and you can only have a healthy looking fit body if you eat 6 times a day. And so that was a big conflict. Well, here's what's neat, is recently, over the past 3 years, all the experts have changed their tune. They are all saying that fasting is so beneficial for the human body. From a hormonal standpoint, you get the highest raises in growth hormone when you fast. From a physiologic standpoint, digestion improves dramatically when you fast. And in fact, your digestive tract needs to rest. And some of the things they're saying is you should fast multiple times a week on a regular basis for health reasons. And now a lot of bodybuilders are incorporating intermittent fasting into their lifestyle because they're noticing they're getting better gains, better results from everything they're eating. So there you go. Once again, the Bible was correct that fasting is actually very, very good for you.
So we speak about fasting to be sort of an extended time of prayer, being in communion with God. Right?
Yes.
We're kind of seeking His will about a matter or working through a difficult problem. Maybe it's a big decision we need to make, and we need to fast about it to see how God would lead in that matter. But it seems like there's a lot of physiological benefits coming to the person who fasts as well, like cleansing of the soul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Those toxins maybe that live in there get released through fasting.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you never give the body a chance to rest, then it doesn't recover. And so if the liver is constantly working on digesting your food, and the gallbladder is constantly working, and pancreas is constantly working, I mean, your stomach should be empty within 90 minutes of eating, right? So, but the rest of the GI tract is not empty.
No.
And so you really need to give it a lot of time. But then the other thing is, how do you feel from a discipline standpoint if every time you're even slightly hungry, you just grab more food?
I would say you're a slave to food.
Yeah.
Food it's become your master.
Exactly. Well, would you rather serve God, or would you rather serve your stomach? And so anything we prioritize, now we're making that our master. And really, your stomach should be a slave.
Yes.
Not a master.
So there's the total fast that Jesus went into here of 40 days, 40 nights without food. And then there's partial fast.
Mhm.
Daniel, through the Bible, he fasted about 10 days, just
Mhm.
eating vegetables and water. So there's different kinds of fasts that people
Correct.
can go on. How would I know which one I need to choose in order to move toward health?
That's a great question. It depends on your goal. So fasting for spiritual reasons, that can be several days. It can be one day, but you certainly want to build strength for that. So let me explain this from a medical standpoint. There are two types of engines in cars. You have diesel engines and you have gasoline engines, right? You'd never put diesel fuel in a gasoline engine, right? Humans run on two sources of fuel also. You have carbohydrates and you have fat. Now, a gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. A gram of fat has 9 calories. 9 calories, so more than double. So it's high octane fuel, it's fat. However, if your body is used to burning sugar and carbohydrates, it doesn't know how to burn the fat. Part of what we need to do is teach it to be able to tap into its fat resources. That's where fasting comes in. So when we first wake up in the morning before we eat anything, we're already in a state of fasting. It takes 12 hours for the food you ate last night to be completely used up.
Okay.
So if you ate dinner at, let's say, 7 p.m., and at 7 a.m. you're ready for breakfast, you find you're about to hit a fasting state where your body is going to make that switch and start using fat for energy. That's when we usually eat, which means we put carbohydrates back in and we get the body to burn that fuel. And a lot of times, depending on what we eat, if you're eating cereal in the morning, if you're eating fruit in the morning, that's when you get the 10 o'clock crash where you're hungry again and it's not lunchtime yet, so you're really starving. However, if you, let's say, skip breakfast one day and you're doing a spiritual fast where you say, hey, I'm going to meditate on the word and I'll pray, and I'm going to teach my stomach some self-discipline so I can gain control over my desires of the flesh. And so at that point you wait an extra 4 hours, and you don't eat at 7 a.m. You go 4 more hours, you go till 11. During those 4 hours, your body is learning how to burn fat for fuel. If you want to really tap into the fat sources, you do some kind of an intense exercise for 4 minutes. Something that gets your blood pumping and breathing heavy, maybe a series of push-ups and squats. Now you're really burning more fat because the body says, I need that energy, I'm going to go get it. Then the carbohydrates tend to have less of an effect on you anyways. It's not going to cause you to get fat as much, and you have less of a response to the carbohydrates.
So from a physiological standpoint, you've not eaten since 7 p.m. the night before. Now 7 a.m., so about a 4-hour stretch of time I'm going to fast and sort of tap into my fat reserves.
Yeah.
Go ketosis.
Exactly. And then if that becomes easy for you, now you can try to stretch it. And try to go to noon. Try to go to 1, 2, 3, and then see if every once in a while you can fast the entire day and go from dinner to dinner. 24 hours of fasting. And during that time, when you think about eating, that's when you open the Word. That's when you feed on living water, and deny yourself the bread.
I like the idea of building up to, a longer period of time to fast.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel like the hunger pains come on really strong.
Right.
And it really is like so tempting to just satisfy those hunger pains.
Right. Well, see, here's the thing. If you really want to train to be able to fast for long hours, then when you do break that fast, whether it's 11 or at noontime, try to eat something with 0 carbs at that time also.
Protein.
Protein and fat. And now the true ketogenic diet, to stay in ketosis, requires a diet that's 80% fat and 20% protein to maintain ketosis. Now, ketosis has been beneficial in things like epilepsy.
Wow.
Epilepsy in children completely cures and goes away when you keep the body in ketosis. Now, I believe they do it for 2 to 3 years, and it cures epilepsy. Johns Hopkins University actually did the whole study on it, and they're the ones that implemented. So that's not what we're telling you to do. This is more of a spiritual fast, and you don't have to do that. However, if you want to increase your body's fat-burning abilities, then don't eat the carbs at lunch. If you skip breakfast for fasting reasons, your lunch, try not to eat carbs, and then maybe 3-4 hours later, maybe 4 in the afternoon, you have some fruit. That'll be your first carbohydrate. And then for dinner, you can have some, rice and maybe a potato and some other vegetables, and obviously a meat of some sort, chicken, steak, my favorite.
Well, I know that the American Heart Association has recommended a low-fat diet.
Yes.
But we're talking now about introducing fats into our life. I know at one point you were drinking coffee and putting butter.
That's right.
Sort of introducing the fat.
Yes.
To go into the ketosis.
Yes.
And that was pretty effective for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I do that a couple times a week at probably three days a week.
Okay.
Because the only time I can go to the gym is at 6:30 in the morning.
Okay.
So I'm usually up at 5 a.m. and my routine is I spend 30 minutes doing some special like postural exercises just to wake my body up. And then I spend 15 minutes reading the Word, and that's when I have my coffee. And then I, get ready and run out to the gym and go to work. So, but if I want to still fast, I need some energy to survive the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So to survive the gym on days that I'm going to be lifting weights is when I drink what's called bulletproof coffee, is where you put coconut oil and grass-fed cow butter in a blender with coffee. You blend it and it becomes this smooth, frothy, creamy concoction that infuses the caffeine in your blood very slowly, because fat is a slow digestion process. So the caffeine doesn't go right into your blood. It goes in little by little by little, and so it sustains your energy levels, and the fat gives you the calories you need. So then I can still go to lunch and have energy.
Well, that's another approach to diet, unlike maybe the American Medical Association's diet, which would say that you want to avoid all fats.
Yeah, I want to kind of touch on that too. Back in probably in the early 80s, I remember 1984, 85, there was this thing called the rice cake, which was very popular. Yeah,
Terrible.
It was awful, but people would eat a lot of it. They came in those little bags, like a cylinder of it, and they said, well, this is fat-free food. And that, I feel like, was the start of the whole fat-free industry. That's when the American Heart Association came out and said, fat's bad for you, because when we find fat in your blood, like triglycerides and cholesterol, those are the people who tend to have heart disease. And so what we should do is we should remove all fat from our diet. So everything went fat-free, and what do you think happened to heart disease?
Went up.
It actually went up. Yeah, I mean, it's a $1 billion industry is fat-free foods, and factories made tons of money from it, but heart disease went up, and one other thing went up, which is obesity. More obesity than before when we took fat out of the diet. And you're probably thinking, because they ate more. Well, yeah, because fat satisfies. So when there's a little bit of fat in your diet, you get satisfied faster, you eat less. And they probably ate a lot of sugar. Well, yeah, because in 1991, they made an announcement that it wasn't fat, it was sugar. Sugar is what's bad for you. Sugar is what causes obesity. Sugar is the reason you have heart disease, and sugar is what's causing all the diabetes. So they took sugar out. A whole new industry started. That's when the zero-calorie sodas came out. Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi didn't exist before that. All these sugar-free things came out, and a whole new industry came about. And what do you think happened? Did obesity go away?
No.
No. Did heart disease go away? Cancer increased, and so did diabetes. In fact, according to the CDC, cases of new cases of diabetes quadrupled year after year after year, beginning in 1991, when everything went sugar-free. And certainly we don't want to get into the explanation of the physiology behind that, but maybe we're not supposed to take that out of our diet completely either. And so carb-free diets right now are popular with weight loss and so on, and yes, they will help you lose weight. But even I, who like to be in ketosis sometimes and do fast multiple times a week, and I do ingest more butter, I still have carbohydrates in my diet. I believe it's necessary, and I believe all of it is important. And the most important food of all is right there in the Holy Book.
And Jesus said that man shall not live by bread alone,
That's right.
but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. This has been delightful, Dr. Amir. Our time's gone for this time, but we'll see you guys again next week.
I can't wait.
That's really good.